Good day. This is our third video on word sums for grade 9 and 10. Do yourself go to the trouble and look at video 1 and video 2 first. They are a little bit more set out. Okay, the first thing we have to know that we must remember is if we don't know a value, we call it x or any small letter. I'm going to read through this question and then I'm going to build it up with you. Sam bought some apples, we don't know how many, at 60 cents each and sold them all but 5 of them at 1 rand each. If he made a profit of 5 rand, how many apples did he buy? It's a lot of information. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change everything to cents. So this is 60 cents already. I'm going to make this 100 cents and I'm going to make this 500 cents. And then I'm going to set up a table for us and we're going to work through that. Alright, remember one of the basic rules of word sums is to read through the word sum 3, 4, 5 times if necessary, slowly, and then trying to connect this. Do not try and do every sum the same way I'm doing it. Get a feeling on what I'm doing and then do your own thing after that. What is important here is that in this question, we don't know how many apples he bought or he sold, so that gives us a problem already. We have these different monies and everything else. I set it up this way. These lines aren't important either. Don't put in so many lines that forces you to put lines and looking for blocks and stuff. Don't. What is important is to see that there was something that was bought, apples was bought, and some was sold. That I need you to see underneath each other, please. The two things. Usually in these word sums, there are two things. I usually put them next to each other, and then I build up systems from there. On the left-hand side, I wrote here on the first line the price that he paid for when he bought them and that he sold them for. How many apples we are talking about, I'm going to put here. And then we're going to have a sum after that. This is not even part of this table. It's just the way I set up my things. So the first thing is that Sam bought some apples at 60 cents. So that I can write in here. The price that he bought them for was 60 cents. And then he sold all but 5 of them. That's confusing, at 1 rand, which is 100 cents. So he sold them at 100 cents. I'm going to put that in there now. So I'm putting my 60 cents in here, taking the C out. There's already excess and rubbish coming at me, so I'm not going to keep the cents there. They are just going to confuse me. How many apples he bought, we don't know. So in other words, we don't know how many he bought. If we don't know something, we put an X. You can also put the X there, and that's confusing in these sums. But I'm going to put my X on how many he bought. So I'm going to put my X here. Then hidden in this information, he says he sold all, that's X of them, but 5 of them at this price. So leave the price out. We got that out already, but he sold all but 5. Now it's easy if somebody reads it to you to see it, but you've got to find it on your own in future. So over here, I'm going to take all less 5. It should look like this. You'll always see in maths, if I see stuff that according to me forms a packet like x minus 5, I automatically put it in brackets because it forms a unit for me. That takes experience. After a while you'll also start doing it. Everything that's in packets goes in brackets, please. Just to revise quickly, you must please understand this. If I tell you that 1 apple costs 60 cents, then I can ask you what will say 1 apple cost. Sounds like a stupid question. Please answer the question in a specific way. If you're asked what will 1 apple cost, you must not answer 60 cents. You must say 1 times 60 cents. Please repeat these words after me. If 1 apple costs 60 cents, then I'll say what will 1 apple cost? And you say 1 apple will cost 1 times 60 cents. The next question will be 2 apples will cost 2 times 60 cents. Please repeat that sentence and the answer. The next one is 3 apples will cost how much? 3 times 60 cents. Do not say 180 cents. Do not work it out. It's a part of word sums to do these calculations without working them out. Now see if you can get a feeling on this as we go on. Now it says X apples will cost how much? X times 60. Do not learn this. You must read all these sentences and write all these answers, and say all these answers, and then your brain will pick this up. X apples will cost, and then it's x times 60, and then in maths we're going to write 60x. You see the 60x, and a lot of people can't see where it comes from, but it comes from 1 apple is 1 times 60 cents, 2 apples 2 times 60 cents, 3 apples 3 times 60 cents, and x apples x times 60 cents. This is totally just an add-in to see if you can pick this up. So back to the original question. In this question we already found out that he bought for 60 cents per apple, and he bought x apples. He sold for R1 or 100 cents per apple, and that was the amount of apples that he sold. Now we can times the 60 with the X to find out how much he paid when he bought them. And then we can times the 100 with the amount that he sold to get the total price that he sold it for. Although it looks a little bit ugly, this is the price that he paid when he bought it, and that is the price that he got when he sold it. This is maths in its roots. So now the question at the top says, if he made a profit of R5, how many apples did he buy? You must have a look at this video a few times, otherwise it won't make sense to you. Now you must see this is the price that he sold, just looks ugly, and this is the price that he paid. And a profit is always the selling price minus the bought price, using all weird words. But this is the money that he got in when he sold it, and this is the money that he paid. So your profit is, now there's three possibilities here to work out the profit. I usually take the money that he got when he sold it, and I minus this amount, and it equals the R5. Now I set up an equation. So try and understand that the table is used to find everything and set it out. And after that, you pull out information out of here and you set up an equation that suits you. I'm going to use a specific one, but please remember that somebody else might feel more comfortable by taking this amount plus the 500 equals this amount. Some people like to take this amount minus the R5 equals this amount. I know it sounds like a war zone, but, and then, or this technique. So there is more than one way of writing it, and that's what makes word sums complicated if you don't put your mind to it and work through it a little bit. And everyone is different from the next one. After we now found our equation, which we have here, we now just go and solve equations. Normally, we times the 100 in here, solve this, solve for x, and then we get the answer that we chose x to be. That's what we're going to do here now. So the first thing we do is we rewrite the question, the old equation. Then we times it out. Then we solve for x with all the different steps that you want to take. And then we get our final answer that x equals 25. The calculations here is not part of this video. The video is to set up an equation, and then you must just solve the equation. What is now also important is to find out now what did we just work out. We've got to go back into our equation and into the planning and see we chose the bought as x. Apples, how many apples did I buy? But I'm going to use it here. So that is what x is. So that 25 must go back in there. I write at the bottom here, what is x? This x that I just found is an answer to a question, but what is it? X is the apples bought. And then I write it back into my table. It looks ugly to scratch in your table, but that x, I've got to replace him at some stage. So that's a 25. I also replace the 25 over there. So in this block, I bought 25 apples. The question was asked, how many apples did I buy? If I want to know how many I sold, I can just replace it in here. Because in the exam or in a test, they can ask us different things. But after I worked out my x, I take it back into my original planning, and I work out everything that I didn't know up until now. So the final answer is, how many apples did he buy? 25.